You don't want to see your villages burn in Manor Lords, but rather win battles? You want to make your villagers happy, or your own coat of arms? Then you are exactly right here. With the early access start of Manor Lords, one of the most interesting strategy games of the last few years will start. And in this game, Manor Lords has one thing in particular: depth, and this in different areas. Therefore, we take you step by step into the various game areas, give you tips and tricks and the most necessary informations, so that your start in Manor Lords works as successfully as possible. And before we really get started, first of all to the settings. You have the option of playing Manor Lords in different language settings, from English, German to other languages. You can simply select these. Our first recommendation is to deactivate the camera shaking under the settings under control, because otherwise you will be shaken through here. We will come back to the most important key bindings and functions in the game later in detail. In the graphics area, we recommend either DLSS for Nvidia cards or FSR for the early access version, as Manor Lords can get quite resource hungry. And in addition, it is advisable to set the maximum frame rate to that of your monitor. And if you have performance problems, we recommend the volumetric clouds and the shadow representations. These gives us a performance boost. And in the gameplay area, you can also deactivate the cosmic day and night cycle, which remains a matter of taste. To get started, we can not only choose our name and our portrait, but also choose a completely self-designable coat of arms. You can find the template for this in the link in the video description on our Discord. You can easily edit the template with any image editing program or Windows tools. And the shield area offers the displayable area, and you can simply put any graphic on it and save it, and then save this file in this directory, your Manor Lords directory, which is automatically created. And the file name must be custom code.png. If you click on the folder symbol in the game, the corrected file is automatically loaded and you have your own coat of arms. And after this, the whole game remains permanently displayed. It can be worthwhile. Let's go to the next tip, the right game start. Because as soon as you start the game, depending on which map you choose, you have a randomly generated starting point. And here, it is possible to get a really bad starting point or a bad starting area, which makes the game much more difficult. For example, an abundant wildlife resource deposit or a wild area is highly recommended for the starting area. Because here you have a clear boost for food supply which lasts permanently. But the fertility of the soil is even more important. To check this, select the building menu here first, and then the different fertility types on the right. And if it looks like this, start the game again. Otherwise, it will be difficult to represent a basic food supply at all. In doing so, the coloration of the soil shows, when selecting the different crops, how well they grow, and at least wheat should be in the slightly green area. Lush iron and clay deposits offer the possibility of producing permanent and unlimited resources with a corresponding upgrade. Otherwise, the resources are sometimes exhausted. And if you have decided on a region, you can adjust the name on the region to your liking with a click in the upper middle area. And don't worry, you can change the name again at any time. Also for other regions. Let's get to the most important hotkeys and buttons. With a press of Ctrl and C, you trigger the cinema mode. Here, the UI disappears and you have a very fluid control. Ideal for beautiful shots or an immersive feeling of your village. By clicking on the eye next to your character symbol, you jump into an eager perspective and can explore the area on foot. But there is no clipping here yet, that means you can just walk through objects. With a key combination of Ctrl, Shift and a number, you can save a camera position. And with a press of Shift and the corresponding number, you can then jump into the pre-made and saved camera position back. This way, you always have your settlement, the battlefield or any other random point in view and can jump back to any time. In the standard, you start Manor Lords with 5 families, which wait for you without a big rest and with some supplies. And in addition, you have an ox, which is used for transport tasks. Right at the start of the game, it is recommended to secure the basic supply. That means we are building a food industry, which initially refers to the collection of berries and the hunting building. But the collection of berries is seasonal. That means that no berries grown in winter and we cannot use this food source in winter. However, we can store the goods, and hunting the wild is possible all year around, but with a different limitation. Here it is very important not to build our hunters too close to a wild area, because otherwise the wild will move away a good bit. You can see the distance when you select the hunting building and go into the area of the wild. So leave enough space here. This does not bother your hunters either. Manor Lords requires roads. Not only your settlers move on these, but also the ox carts and the goods transport. And you don't have to build the paths completely straight. You have the option of selecting the steepness when building a road by holding the control key and moving the mouse wheel. And for a little more overview, it is recommended to use the cleaning tool on the far right on the building menu to remove bushes. And don't worry here, resources or trees will of course remain, but this way you have a lot more overview of your building ground. The most important buildings are the lumberjack, the sawmill and the firewood hut, which we need especially for the cold season. And all buildings need a road access and a direct connection. The small markers indicate whether the road connection is available or not. And you can also let this click automatically. And with that, we already come to an essential point in Manor Lords, namely the goods transport, especially for heavy items. Especially lug trunks cannot be pulled by people, but you need an ox for this. And in the beginning, you only have one ox. And this is not only completes the transport to the construction site, but also when the lumberjack has cut down a tree in the forest. Therefore, especially at the beginning of the game, the ox cart is the key where a lot can be blocked. Because the ox needs someone to lead it, and it is needed for all construction work as well as the transport for the lumberjack. Here we recommend to finish the wood production as quickly as possible to make boards in the sawmill. Because with these boards, we can upgrade to a small stable, which brings the option for a second ox, which has a clear influence on our goods transport, especially in the early game phase, so a must-have. But in order for a production to start at all, we have to obligatory assign families to the different production buildings. So we will assign one of our 5 families to the lumberjack camp. Therefore, especially at the beginning of the game, we are busy with planning our villages accordingly from one to the other production building. And this is where the information bar helps us. Because on the far left we see not appointed workers, who do the transport tasks with the ox or do construction work, as well as the appropriate construction workers on the next symbol. But these do not perform additional tasks, but only their assigned job in the assigned building. Then comes the living space and our population, where this is measured in families. So no individual residents, but family clans, which we also assign to the construction work. This, not only one village resident, but an entire family works with our lumberjack. And of course, this also applies to our berry collectors and our hunters, which we also assign a family to. Because with this, we have ensured our food supply. And the respective production buildings we can also see directly, with a click on people, where the various family members are located and what activities they are doing or if they are ill. So in Manor Lords, the real cycles are represented realistically. That means our lumberjack cuts down a tree, processes it and then cannot transport this tree trunk alone. Here comes our ox again, or hopefully our 2 ox, because they will be very exhausted at the beginning with the transport of tree trunks and tree material. In addition, one should not underestimate the factor of time, because the production only slowly comes into motion and gradually goods are filled up. Therefore, it is not always done with a shift of labor in another area, because they first have to start with the work, then the transport takes place and finally the processing, until we get our long-awaited lumberjacks. And we need them, especially at the beginning, in order to grade our stable and to be able to order a second ox. But an absolute crucial point in Manor Lords is the production. The next step is the further production. This is done through the residential buildings of our villagers and should not be underestimated. We can build residential buildings in an area, and here we are shown how many of these buildings can be placed. We can adjust them via the rotation function, and via the plus and minus we can determine the number of buildings that are planned or built in this area. And here is the urgent tip. Make sure to design the building surfaces generously, especially if you want to produce food here later, such as vegetables. Because for the production of a vegetable plantation in a residential building, you need as much space as possible. On the other hand, for the production of eggs or a goat, less space. But the building area should always be large enough to allow alternative buildings at all, which can be seen in the small additional building symbol. The other symbol is the building extension, which means you can accommodate several families here. This makes it necessary to plan in advance in which building you want to produce later, because also ongoing productions such as forging, shoemaking or other productions take place here. In this building, we now have space for an additional building and an extension. We can also quickly see visually whether additional space is available in a residential building or which specialization is available here. Here, we left a lot of space at our farm because it is planned to grow vegetables here. And here it is an advantage to use significantly more space than, for example, if we build eggs or a goat stable here. Because for vegetables we need appropriate construction area. But here again a note, especially at the beginning of the game, save enough money for a second ox, because we have to buy this one. For this we need the previously made boards. 2 pieces are enough and we can expand a small stable. Here we have a second place for a connection. That means we can also accommodate a second ox here. After the completion we can then hand in an order, and the next dealer visit we get our second ox for 20 currency units. And the goods production or transport doubles. Of course, we must not forget the water supply, which we also find in the basic building menu. Here we can place a well directly near our residential buildings. Now let's come to the marketplace. This building is a marketplace of needs, which does not cost building materials, and you should have at least 15 to 20 seats place. Here, your villagers or the production buildings will automatically offer their goods, and without them, your villagers will not be happy. And we need satisfaction, because otherwise we will not get up further and will not get new villagers or families who can do the work. If we have built 5 houses, we have already fulfilled everything to reach this first level. And with every level, we get a progress point which we save, until we know in which direction our settlement will develop. But more on this soon. First, we take care of the trading posts, because with the basic goods production we have the opportunity to trade and generate income. Because we have no tax revenue, especially at the beginning of the game, and otherwise we cannot buy upgrades. And without money, we cannot improve our buildings or increase our production. However, it is not enough to build a trading post and to place a family there, but we first have to buy a trading route. In the beginning, it is advisable to either trade with stones or boards, where boards offer a selling price of 2. And after we have only bought an ox and built a vegetable farm, we still have enough money left to open this trading route. Here we only have to set up a trade export on the left side again and the desired amount. Automatically arriving traders then buy our boards and we receive fees and can continue to upgrade and expand. And with your first trading route, you have the opportunity to further increase your population and to build new buildings. Here we make sure again that in every building that we build there is an expansion and an opportunity for an upgrade. So you need some space. Our second ox already accelerates the goods transport considerably, and our built vegetables garden already brings the first yields and additional provides your population with foodstuff, which should not be underestimated. The next step is to build a church. This greatly increases the satisfaction of your villages. And as soon as your satisfaction has reached over 50, more families will come to your area and we can have far more workforce. We then invest further revenue from our first trading route in chicken farms and goats. Because here we also have passive bonuses in terms of foodstuffs or goods supply. And since it is slowly approaching winter in the first year, as we see in the lower right corner, we should also increase the firewood production. And here it is enough to have 1 to a maximum of 2 families work short term. They produce enough firewood to keep you going through the winter, especially since you can continue the producing firewood in the winter, so you don't have to have a supply in place beforehand. And with the rise of the first level, you have also unlocked another core building, your mansion, which has additional modules. Where we are interested first in the tax office at the beginning to generate tax revenue. But here's a hint, only villages of the second level will pay taxes. But you also get a small troop of soldiers, which will be important later. Your settlement is now getting bigger and bigger and some more confusing. Therefore, a push on the tab button helps. Here you not only see a production load, whether there are workers at all, construction progress and where your transports are located, but also the satisfaction of your inhabitants. And in order to be able to upgrade these inhabitants to level 2, we have to meet basic needs, such as water, a church, food and clothing, and also firewood. Once we have fulfilled these needs, we can then make an improvement to level 2. Although it makes sense not to upgrade all inhabitants to level 2, because level 2 inhabitants no longer do level 1 work. So here you should have a good mixture, 2/3 from level 1 and 1/3 from level 2. And to significantly increase the satisfaction, it is also advisable to have 1 family in the church. And by clicking on the bell, you have also unlocked an achievement in Steam. With enough level 1 inhabitants and corresponding improvements such as vegetables, chickens and goats, you have satisfied the basic needs relatively quickly. And in addition, you have a good indicator of satisfaction with the church. But level 2 inhabitants have the option of starting various special production buildings, which are only possible via this option. This means that in order to forge weapons, clothing and so on, you will necessarily need level 2 inhabitants and suitable places to be able to place the expansion. But once again the note, do not convert all inhabitants to level 2, because you also need workers for level 1 activities and jobs. Therefore, a slow gradual expansion of the population into higher levels is advisable. You will be dealing by bandits early on, and for this, your Lord's house is one of the more important buildings. Here, you can open the castle planner, among other things, and also set your tax rate. We recommend a tax rate of 5 and a church tithe also of 5, which converts excess food into inflow, which we will need later for the transfer of foreign areas. And the tax increases our income. But taxes are only paid by citizens of level 2. Level 1 citizens do not pay taxes and the income is significantly lower than through trade routes. We can also upgrade the Lord's house, for example, with the garrison tower, which can increase the number of our main troops in our standard army. And this is our entourage. In doing so, we basically get 5 very effective and heavily armored troops with the creation of our Lord's house, so the mansion. And we can continue to expand this very strong unit, depending on which buildings we build, up to 30 men. And with our private fortune, not our original fortune, we can buy additional men, who offer a very powerful troop, especially against brigands and outlaws. And you can personalize this troop to your heart's content without additional costs. And since you have different options for equipment and armaments, you can build your own troop. And another advantage is that it is not about current villagers, as with other troops that you can recruit. And equipped villagers are generally cheaper, but are less powerful, and with a loss, you have fewer people who can do work. Over time, various brigands and outlaws appear on the map, which can be a very lucrative source of income. And here we can use different types of troops. Our very strong entourage, with a standard of 5 men after the construction of the Lord's house or the mansion, up to troops that we feed from our villages. whereby we get 20 shields and 20 spears at the first level when we ascend. But we need at least 20 adult male soldiers. Here, our villagers are equipped with shields and spears, and above all, our entourage clearly superior to the attackers. And so we can take on various outlaw posts relatively easily and without danger. Here, Manor Lords are switched into a kind of total warlock, because here we can also choose different formations, change our posture and tactically send our opponent to the flank or in the rear as much as possible. Basically, our troops fight much more effectively and better if they had time to rest, so a little break before the battle. Here we sprinted through to counter the outlaws, which also led to victory without losses. And with the defeat of an outlaw troop, we have free access to the outlaw camp, which we can turn into money directly when storming. Here we can collect either regional wealth or in our private wealth, which we definitely recommend first. Because here we have one of the few sources of income for our private wealth. Because with that we can either hire mercenaries or later take over whole regions. And after the battle, we send our troops home again, and they resume their work without losses or that we would lose equipment. And already the standard entourage of 5 men from the mansion offers enough power at the beginning to defeat one or the other brigand gang and generate income quickly and effectively. And with every 50 private wealth, we can permanently secure 1 new follower until we have a rather powerful troop against larger enemy hordes. In addition, we gain a significant amount of influence with every victory, so the value we need to take over additional regions. But we not only need 1000 influence, but also 250 from our private wealth to take over a foreign region, because with that we can then build a camp that allows us to build in a new region. Don't let the outlaws camp escape, because as I said, this offers the easiest and fastest source of income. And if you send resources to the next city, you get about twice the amount for your original wealth, so for upgrading and buying goods. And with 1000 influence, we can claim a foreign area and let it pass into our possession. And after the end of the battle, we have the area in our possession, but as I said, we cannot build directly yet. To be able to build in a taken area, we need a settler camp, which requires 250 from our private wealth. Here we have the same starting conditions as in the game city in our first village. And with a second settlement, we also have double the work and can build up our goods circuits here, analogously to our first city, and accordingly also move goods via donkey carts. In addition, resources and regional wealth are separated depending on which settlement you are currently building. So you cannot use the goods and resources of the first settlement. In the next tip, everything revolves around sheep breeding, one of the most lucrative and easiest trade routes. For this, we buy a few sheep via cattle trade post and take the sheep breeding perk as much as possible, because then the sheep automatically multiply and we have no further costs and new sheep run, which not only allows us wool, but also enable the sale of sheep. And in addition, this industry branch works all year round, including in winter, and offers various advantages. And after which we can continue to let the wool in other buildings and ultimately process it to small production chains. And we do not need more than the sheep breeding and the pasture for this. This generates a steady and very high income. The next tip is about the storage for food and the warehouse for general goods. Use these as early as possible and, if possible, permanently occupy with a family. This significantly reduces your goods traffic and the supply of goods is much more available on the marketplace. And in addition, your satisfaction increases and you can get up faster. The next tip is about the arrangement of families. Especially in production buildings, you have to switch back and forth again and again, depending on whether there is enough material to collect or to hunt. Change here for the time when you do not need it in production buildings to process the resources you have gained. The focus should always be on what you can harvest or produce seasonally. But here we come to the agriculture in detail. For different production areas, you can not only let them work automatically, but assign work areas. For example, you can have wood from certain areas or remove for reforesting. The next tip is about your hunters. If you use them skillfully, you will have to hunt wild all the time. Make sure not to exceed the limit and always leave half of the available animals as possible, because they then recover relatively quickly and you can hunt permanently. And if you have a lush hunting ground, it is a good idea to leave the hunting ground low. Let's go to agriculture. If you have a reasonably good fertility, it is a good idea to have 4 fields, since we can work with a fruit change, that is, to let different fields be cultivated in different ways over and over again, to guarantee as high a fertility and good harvest as possible. And the size of each individual field should correspond to 1 morgen land or something like that. Here we can then choose which fields are ordered and whether a fruit change is included. Our farmers will then automatically order the fields accordingly, and we have a production of all goods permanently every year and have no influence from the harvest. It is also sufficient in any case to build a single farm, whereby we recommend assigning an ox here, that is, to bind an ox directly in the farm. But the use of an ox only works if we select the plow perk accordingly via the settlement menu. That means if you have already disturbed water perks, you have to wait until your settlement rises another level. But especially if you use agriculture, the plow perk offers a clear bonus and increases the speed enormously. The next tip is again about the correct construction of different houses for your settlers. Because your farmers also need their own houses and do not sleep in the farm itself. So always make sure to have a supplement to a corresponding level 1 housing with the option of installing various upgrades here. Because depending on the season, we plow, sow or harvest. And especially for farms, we have a large part of the year where no more work is necessary after sowing or harvesting. Here you can then pull off the families directly and distribute them to other tasks, such as grinding grain and baking bread. And especially for this area, it is also advisable to use the perk with the bakery via the settlement menu. Because here we have the option of baking bread directly in a level 2 house and do not need a separate family and a separate bakery. This automatically bakes bread and we do not need any additional labor. In general, it is especially advisable to continue processing the goods produced in the summer, whether in the dyeing, harvesting or in other production buildings. Because with the use of a warehouse or a grain storage, we always have goods available, no matter when they are produced. Because only when goods are in the open, they can get lost. For maps with a winning condition of domination, you have to check all areas. You do not have to build on these, but only register your requirements. And with enough fights, you have enough influence to do this relatively quickly. The next tip is the tavern. This also expands your satisfaction and lets you get to level 3 settlers. For this you need barley and a mill from your farmers. And you can also brew beer via a level 2 building and a brewery. Otherwise you will not get the valuable goods. Sooner or later it can happen that you are attacked in your own area and have to fight. If you also drive away the attackers here, you still have the problem that you have relatively many corpses on your property. And that is nothing but positive for the satisfaction of your villages. So after you have destroyed the enemy army, you can disband your troops as soon as you have come out of the fight, to let them get to work again. On the other hand, you should then build a corpse group. In the short term, you can also assign a family here, which then carries the corpses from the battlefield and buries them as far away for your settlement as possible. And for more tips and tricks or hints, feel free to visit us in Discord, leave a comment or check our daily Twitch live streams. So, see you soon and thanks for watching!